10 things you didn't know about Star Wars Outlaws, the upcoming open-world video game set in the Star Wars universe. If it's your first time here, hi, hello, my name is Sophie, also known as Cadaea, and Ubisoft very kindly flew me out to LA earlier this month for a very exclusive influencer event where we got to speak to devs from Massive Entertainment and Lucasfilm Games, the voice actors from Star Wars Outlaws, and play a few hours of the game itself. Okay, that's the intro, onto the list. Number 1, we've got something that I found very interesting when the devs were describing how the game came together. The first decisions that they made together as a team after actually agreeing to work on the game, which they were very excited about because they're all huge fans of Star Wars, especially the original trilogy. Anyway, the first decisions were that they wanted to make an open world game, which makes sense given Massive Entertainment's previous titles, including Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora and The Division 1 and 2, and that they wanted to give players the Star Wars scoundrel experience. Other things like when the story is set and which locations to include, they came later down the line, based on those first two decisions. And when exactly would a story of a plucky scoundrel with grand dreams of freedom make sense in the Star Wars storyline? Well, they landed on the year gap between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Following the Battle of Hoth and still under Empire rule, criminal syndicates were rising in power, offering no shortage of opportunities for a scoundrel like Kay to thrive, increase their reputation, and have sensible reason to interact with Star Wars characters that you already know and love. Yes, they could have easily gone down the fan service route and featured as many as possible, and I wouldn't have blamed them for that, but they have legitimately considered who Kay would genuinely bump into during that time. For example, we already know that we'll cross paths with Jabba the Hutt at some point, and it makes sense. This is a period of time where influential criminals like Jabba were ruling the underworld. Lando Calrissian is another confirmed character in Outlaws, but I don't want to spoil too much about that. The decision to go with a dual protagonist, because Nix is unmistakably a protagonist, was another early choice based on how Star Wars has repeatedly just married characters together. Think of Mando and Grogu, R2-D2 and C-3PO, Chewie and Han Solo. It always has to be a duo. Number 2, as you're already aware, they haven't skimped in detail when it comes to creating a true-to-source material environment, and that includes a wealth of fantastical creatures. And I am very happy to report that you can indeed pet and feed many of them. Something I didn't get to experience myself during the gameplay session, but I'm very excited to find in-game, is a series of side missions that involve finding the hidden stashes of an unknown criminal. From what was explained by the devs, it seems that we're talking about a very well-known scoundrel who has either passed away or disappeared, so all of that high-value loot is up for the taking. And we're talking very high-value loot here. Something they really emphasized was how they want to encourage players to be curious, and that curiosity with intent will be rewarded. Speaking of side missions, Nix also has their own series called Nix Tales, so definitely do keep an eye out if you see Nix trying to get your attention and lead you somewhere, because it very much could be worth your time. I believe the news has already broken that Nix and Jabba is voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who you may already know as the voice of Rex from Star Wars Rebels, or the Bad Batch from The Bad Batch, or multiple clones from The Clone Wars, or perhaps Klaus from American Dad, Momo and Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender, Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb, Hammond from Overwatch 2, and okay, you get the gist. He's been in a lot. And it was very funny when he found out that the others had many mocap sessions without him, because, of course, why would they need to mocap him for Nix? And even funnier when we found out that the first iteration of Nix that they had to act with before the professional puppet was crafted was actually a blue Elmo toy. Let's move on to Kay for number 5. Kay Vess is played by the lovely Humberly Gonzalez, who spoke about her experience getting the role. And I'm sure we all know by now, when it comes to a franchise as big as this, you often can't just explicitly say, this is an audition for Star Wars. So she had to sign lots of paperwork to even audition in the first place, and they made up a story to go with the test lines to not arouse suspicion, and apparently it took 5 months for her to even find out that she'd been hired. Imagine getting that call that you're going to be the lead in a Star Wars game. During development, Kay, ND5 and Nix all shot their parts mostly separately, so this event was really the first time that they'd seen that much of the game. So I've spoken a lot about nice anecdotes behind development of Outlaws, so let's dive back into the gameplay. I was surprised by the amount of mandatory stealth, and by that, I mean there seems to be frequent missions where you're not offered the choice to go in guns blazing, which is my preferred style. I don't know if it's just because they gave us specific missions and areas to go to, but I hope that's not the case for the rest of the game. I was also surprised when I jumped on my speeder at the beginning of the gameplay session and I wasn't able to shoot the enemies chasing me. I crashed so many times because I thought it was user error, but no, apparently shooting from your speeder is something that you learn later on. You'll explore many urban areas rife with crime that look very cool so far, but let's talk about the minigames. Yes, you can play Sabak, there's entire parlours dedicated to that. What I wasn't aware of was the number of different arcade machines that you can also play, and the horse racing. I don't like horse racing, I don't understand horse racing, so I'm happy to admit that I'm probably currently the worst gambler in the Star Wars universe. I think I've actually surpassed 10 at this point, but let's take a quick look at the reputation system in action. We've seen how your reputation can affect whether you can enter certain guarded areas and how much vendors will charge you in different areas under syndicate rule, but it hadn't been confirmed that you can align temporarily with a group. You don't have to permanently choose one. Kay needs to look out for Kay, and throughout the game you should keep that in mind and make strategic decisions based on what's best for her. But there's no right or wrong, you're not making friends or even allegiances, reputation is something else entirely. Before I finish, I have a few updates to make on my previous video where I got to play 3 20-minute demos of the game in LA again, before the Ubisoft Forward presentation during Summer Game Fest. I've now had a lot more time with the weapons, and I got to play mouse and keyboard this time, so I'm feeling more positive about the combat. I didn't get to play around with the customization then, and unfortunately I'm not allowed to show you anything right now from my footage, but yeah, you have a lot more options than I'd reported in that previous video. Whether the combat offers a difficult enough challenge for the most seasoned shooter gamers, I'm still not convinced, but happy to be proven wrong. There are no lightsabers, I think I'm allowed to say that, that's already public information. Oh, and I said that I really liked the ship combat before. I liked the dogfights. Couldn't work them out at all on mouse and keyboard. I guess maybe we're in different parts of the game. I don't know if there were different upgrades that I didn't have at that time. Maybe it was just because I was trying to do it with mouse and keyboard and I should have just picked up the controller, but it was definitely a lot more difficult. Hopefully that is just user error because I had so much fun the first time round with a controller. I've also seen a lot more of Kay's personality, and I'm more interested in her as a character, but also Umberlee was an absolute delight. We didn't get to interact with ND5 so much, so I really can't comment on them. I can't wait to meet them in the game, but yeah, still, after 5 hours of gameplay, I know they're a key character, but maybe they're hiding something. Okay, now I think that's everything for this video. I have a lot of Star Wars Outlaws content still to come, so I hope you've enjoyed watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next upload.